In 1962, and again in 1988, Myanmar's military seized power, crushed the resulting street protests, and forced the public into decades of silence. When tanks rolled into Naypyidaw in February 2021, the generals expected that exact same playbook to work. But years later, the country remains unpacified. Instead of a swift submission, the military finds itself locked in a bleeding, nationwide stalemate. Many international observers now view the junta's strategy as failing. The military has lost massive swaths of territory, and its combat ranks are visibly depleted. Yet, despite losing ground, the top brass refuses to negotiate. The military leadership acts with an unyielding confidence that they will inevitably crush the opposition. To predict how this conflict actually ends, we have to look past the daily headlines. We need to deconstruct why this decentralized resistance has proven so difficult to dismantle, and the logic that keeps the military leadership convinced they will prevail. The military faced an immediate hurdle with the generation they were trying to subjugate. Young people in Myanmar, Generation Z in particular, grew up with a taste of democratic freedom, and they have refused to give it up. The resistance moved beyond the streets and into the infrastructure of the state itself. Through tax strikes, continuous civil disobedience, and a widespread boycott, citizens have made stable governance nearly impossible. That administrative collapse bled into open warfare. Past conflicts in Myanmar were usually confined to ethnic minority groups fighting in the border jungles. Now, the fighting has swallowed the central plains and major cities. This shift is driven by thousands of local People's Defense Forces, or PDFs. These are informal networks of citizens who took up arms to defend their own towns. This creates a decentralized resistance. There is no single base to bomb and no central commander to target. The military can clear an entire district, only for a new PDF cell to emerge in the next town over. Fighting a sprawling insurgency against their own citizens has hollowed out the military from the inside. Frontline morale has hit historic lows, leading to a wave of state security personnel surrendering or abandoning their posts to join the resistance. The junta's manpower crisis became so severe that by 2024, they were forced to implement a mass conscription law, dragging unwilling civilians to the front lines just to maintain combat numbers. A traditional military hierarchy relies on discipline and numbers to hold territory. When facing a faceless, sprawling network while simultaneously running out of willing soldiers, control becomes an illusion. But the junta has a very different map of reality. They still control the state treasury, the major national infrastructure, and crucially, absolute air superiority. They are weaponizing those resources through a doctrine known as the 4 cuts. This strategy involves intentionally severing food, funds, intelligence, and recruits from the civilian population. By burning entire villages and destroying local economies from the air, the military is attempting to drive the civilian population to a psychological and financial breaking point. They are also deploying their oldest historical tactic, divide and rule. The resistance is a fragile alliance of ethnic militias and youth groups with conflicting visions. The junta offers lucrative side deals and local autonomy to specific armies, aiming to fracture that unified front and let the resistance destroy itself through infighting. Externally, the junta relies on a geopolitical shield. Western nations issue sanctions, but neighboring powers like China, India, and Thailand maintain critical economic lifelines. These neighbors often prioritize stability over human rights. They fear a fractured, anarchic state run by dozens of competing militias, far more than they fear a predictable, brutal dictatorship. The military leadership is betting on pure endurance, calculating that they can survive long enough for the resistance to collapse from starvation, infighting, and international indifference. This conflict has evolved into a brutal stress test. It pits the collective psychology of an entire nation against the stockpiled resources of a heavily armed state. The military's entire calculus relies on the clock. They are gambling that the resistance network will splinter and break before the state completely runs out of cash and willing conscripts. The only countermeasure to that attrition is absolute solidarity. The resistance must maintain its cross-ethnic and cross-generational alliances, even while enduring heavy casualties. If economic exhaustion sets in, Or if the junta's bribes successfully turn local militias against each other, the military's waiting game succeeds. Ultimately, the junta can only be defeated if the people of Myanmar endure the unimaginable long enough to prove a very simple equation, that their refusal to be ruled is stronger than the state's capacity to inflict pain.